All right, so that, of course, is the big threat, that this war that is presently ongoing in Ukraine could actually spread well beyond the borders of Ukraine. And to help us make sense of what's actually happening, we're being joined by Mr. Joachim Bitterlich, who's a former German ambassador to NATO and also a former European diplomatic and security advisor to the former German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, and is joining us live on this broadcast. Now, Ambassador Bitterlich, this is something that's being talked about quite a bit. There are different estimates that are being put forth as to when this war could spread beyond the borders of Ukraine. The German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius says that Germany should be prepared for war by 2029. Poland has said that the war could come knocking on their gates by as early as 2027, that is in 3 years from now. So as the longer this war drags on in Ukraine, what is the likelihood that it will actually spill over into different nations in Europe?
Well, nothing is more difficult than any look into the future. The problem is Pistorius and the German government are in front of a situation where the German army is no more ready for war or capable of entering with forces in a real war. Please don't forget, this war in Ukraine has been a deep shock for the Germans. The Germans have become in the last 30 years, let's say, more and more pacifistic, less and less believing in the necessity of a real army. Therefore, reduction of budget, reduction of ammunition, reduction of equipment, only small forces. Don't forget, the last forces used have gone to former Yugoslavia, to the Balkans, and then to Afghanistan. Afghanistan, let's say, in a small little corner in the northwest for the Germans. But this has not been, let's say, an army in training or in use as the French army or the American one has been in the last 30 years. Therefore, this shock, this, let's say, this need of regetting a real army in Germany. And I think Pistorius is realistic when he's speaking about the need for 4 or 5 years to be there, that you may use the German army. Take one example. The Germans have promised to Lithuania, in the northwest of Europe, near to the Russian border, with this Russian exclave in Kaliningrad, to set up there a brigade.
That's true.
It's 27. Please bear in mind, what does it mean? 3-4 years to set up a brigade in a foreign country. It may be too late. If you imagine Russia could, let's say, reinforce hybrid war, even, let's say, small wars beyond Ukraine, in the Baltics, or in near Romania, Moldova, etc., the German and the European armies have to be prepared.
Right.
And there are 2 armies in Europe prepared to real conflict, the French and the British.
You know, I think you've raised an important question here, but this is something that I'm sure a lot of people within Germany would also be talking about. Is the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz sleepwalking into a conflict in Ukraine behind the United States of America by permitting Ukraine to use German-made long-range missiles?
I think long-range missiles is another question. Scholz, after consultation with the British, the French and the Americans, it's the former Quad, they have been sounding out to what extent the Ukraine could be allowed to use Western weapons. And it had been allowed to use these weapons beyond the border, but only towards military objects near the border. Let's say the Americans speak about 100 miles, no more. There are other targets. And I don't think at all that Olaf Scholz is sleepwalking into a larger conflict. He is the one in Europe, perhaps more than others, who tries to avoid any, let's say, suitable escalation of a conflict.
Right.
But he, on the other hand, to go with the alliance, to go with the allies, and therefore this strong, let's say, coordination with the Americans and with the French.
But do you not see us to have this very quickly, because we're short of time, Ambassador Bitterlich, but do you not see the fact that the Germans are now allowing Ukrainians to use their long-range missiles has now made Germany a target for any Russian attacks? Vladimir Putin has been pretty clear. He said that any nation that lets their long-range weapons to be used by the Ukrainians to target Russia will become a target itself.
But the Russians have been talking about this since the beginning. And they try, let's say, to push, especially towards the partner in Western Europe they consider as the weakest, as the most pacifist. This is Germany. And I don't think they know exactly that Scholz wants to, let's say, a limited support. For example, he has not delivered the Taurus missiles, Taurus missiles that could reach Moscow. He refuses, and I think he's right to do so. But if you see the attacks coming near from the border, region of Belgorod in the north, till direction Kharkiv, I think the Ukrainians have to be allowed to defend themselves. Article 51 of the UN Charter, self-defense. And this is the meaning of what Olaf Scholz is saying and allowing.
All right, we'll have to see as to how this will, of course, be perceived in Moscow. Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Bitterlich, for joining us and getting us that perspective there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.